Emma was a quiet girl. She liked to spend her time reading and drawing. At 10 years old, she didn't talk much, but she always cared a lot about others. One sunny afternoon, Emma walked by the woods near her house. She liked to go there to think. While she was walking, she heard a soft whining sound. It was coming from behind a bush. Emma pushed the branches aside and saw a small, scruffy dog. His fur was messy, and one of his legs looked hurt. He was limping and looked very sad. Emma knelt down slowly. "Hey, little guy," she said softly. The dog looked up at her with big, tired eyes. Emma's heart broke for him. "Don't worry, I'll help you." The dog didn't run away. He seemed too tired to move. Carefully, Emma picked him up. He was light and shivered in her arms. "I'll call you Oscar," she said with a small smile. When Emma got home, her mom saw the dog and frowned. "Emma, we can't keep him," she said. "But Mom, he's hurt. I can take care of him," Emma begged. Her dad looked at the dog and sighed. "Okay, but only until we find his owner," he said. Emma nodded. She was just happy Oscar could stay, even if it was only for a little while. Emma gave Oscar food and water. He ate quickly, like he hadn't eaten in days. She cleaned his fur and wrapped his hurt leg with an old cloth. Oscar wagged his tail, and Emma felt proud. The next day, Emma noticed something strange. She was playing with a ball, and Oscar jumped in the air and caught it. Then he did it again, but this time, he spun in a circle first. Emma clapped. "Wow, Oscar, you're amazing." Later, Emma found a hula hoop in the garage. She held it up. "Can you jump through this?" she asked. To her surprise, Oscar ran and jumped right through the hoop. Emma laughed. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" Oscar kept showing Emma more tricks. He could balance a stick on his nose and even roll over when she said the word. But Emma never taught him any of these tricks. She started to wonder how he knew them. One night, Emma was lying in bed, and Oscar was sleeping on a blanket nearby. Suddenly, a loud train whistle sounded far away. Oscar jumped up, his ears straight. He started shaking and ran under the bed. Emma sat up. "What's wrong, Oscar?" she asked. She looked under the bed. Oscar was curled up, trembling. Emma thought about the train. Then she remembered something she saw on TV about circuses traveling with trains. Could Oscar have been in a circus? She wondered. She didn't know, but one thing was clear. Oscar had a story, and Emma wanted to find out what it was. As Emma sat on the floor next to Oscar, she whispered, "Don't worry. I'll keep you safe." Oscar's shaking slowed, and he rested his head on her hand. Emma smiled. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She and Oscar had found each other for a reason. Emma woke up to an exciting day. A circus had come to town. Big posters were everywhere. They showed pictures of lions, elephants, and people flying through the air. Everyone in the small town was talking about it. "We should go to the circus," Emma's friend Mia said at school. But Emma wasn't sure. She thought about Oscar. Ever since she found him, he had been acting a little strange. And when she saw a circus poster near her house, Oscar growled softly. That wasn't like him at all. Later, when Emma took Oscar for a walk, she tried to go near the circus grounds. But Oscar stopped walking. He sat down and wouldn't move. His tail was between his legs, and his eyes looked scared. "What's wrong, Oscar?" Emma asked. She tried to pull him gently, but he refused to budge. Emma sighed. "Okay, we'll go the other way." That night, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the circus and Oscar. "What is it about the circus that scares you so much?" she whispered to him. Oscar just looked at her with his big, sad eyes. The next day, Emma made a decision. "I'm going to the circus," she said. "And you're coming with me, Oscar. Don't worry, I'll keep you safe." When they got to the circus, the air smelled like popcorn and cotton candy. Bright lights and music filled the place. Kids were laughing and holding balloons. But Oscar didn't look happy. He stayed close to Emma, his tail low. As they walked, Oscar suddenly stopped. He stood very still, his ears up. Then he started pulling on the leash. "What is it, Oscar?" Emma asked. He pulled harder, leading Emma toward the back of the circus tents. Behind the colorful tents, it was quiet. Emma saw cages with animals inside. There was a lion pacing back and forth, and an elephant tied to a post. They didn't look happy. They looked tired and sad. Oscar froze. He sniffed the air, then let out a soft whine. Emma knelt beside him. "Did you used to live here, Oscar?" she asked softly. She touched his head gently. Oscar looked up at her, his eyes full of something Emma couldn't quite understand. Was it fear? Sadness? Both? Emma felt a lump in her throat. She looked at the animals again. The lion's cage was too small. The elephant's chains looked heavy. Emma's heart hurt for them. "Come on, Oscar," she whispered. "Let's go home." As they walked away, Emma knew one thing for sure. She needed to learn more about the circus, and she needed to find out what happened to Oscar. There was a story here, and Emma was determined to uncover it. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the animals she saw at the circus. The small cages, the heavy chains, the tired eyes. It stayed in her mind. She decided to go back to see more, even though it made her sad. She had to know the truth. That evening, Emma and Oscar went back to the circus. They went around the back near the animal tents. Emma saw elephants. They were thin and their ribs showed. They looked so sad, swaying side to side. Next to them were tigers. They were in tiny cages, barely big enough to stand up. One of them growled softly, and Emma's heart hurt. Suddenly, a loud voice made Emma jump. A trainer was yelling at a dog in a cage. The dog was skinny, with a chain around its neck. The trainer kicked the cage, and the dog whimpered. Oscar growled low and deep. Emma had never seen him so angry. "Stop it," Emma whispered to Oscar, holding his leash tightly. But she couldn't stop herself from staring at the trainer. She looked at Oscar. "Is this what happened to you?" she asked softly. Oscar's ears went back, and he looked away. Emma felt her chest tighten. "You were a circus dog, weren't you?" she whispered. Emma didn't want to cry, but her eyes felt hot. She thought about how scared Oscar must have been. She thought about how scared all the animals here must be. "I'll help you," she said to Oscar. "I'll help them too. I promise." As they walked back home, Emma felt both determined and scared. She wanted to rescue the animals, but she didn't know how. She was just a kid. How could she make a difference? Emma sat in her room that night, thinking hard. "I can't do this alone," she said to herself. She grabbed a notebook and started writing a plan. Maybe she could talk to other people. Maybe she could find someone who could help her. She wasn't sure yet, but she knew she had to try. Oscar lay on the floor next to her, his head on his paws. He looked up at Emma, as if to say, "I trust you." Emma smiled. "We'll figure this out," she said. "I won't let you down." Emma didn't know how long it would take, but she had made up her mind. She would help Oscar, and she would help the other animals too. No matter what it took, she wouldn't give up. Emma couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the animals at the circus. She needed to do something, but she didn't know what. Finally, she sat up in bed. "I have to get proof," she said. "People need to see what's happening." Late that night, Emma put on her jacket and grabbed her phone. "Come on, Oscar," she whispered. Oscar followed her, wagging his tail, but he seemed to know this was serious. They sneaked through the dark streets and reached the circus grounds. The bright lights were off now, and it was quiet. Emma's heart was pounding. "Stay close, Oscar," she said. He stayed by her side. Emma took out her phone and started recording. She filmed the tiny cages and the sad animals inside. The elephants were still tied up, swaying back and forth. The tigers were lying down, but their cages were so small they couldn't stretch out. Emma's hands shook as she filmed. Suddenly, Oscar's ears perked up. He let out a low growl. "Show Oscar," Emma whispered. She looked around and saw a trainer walking nearby. Emma held her breath and crouched behind a barrel. The trainer didn't see them and walked away. Emma let out a sigh of relief. When they got back home, Emma uploaded the videos to her computer. She called a local animal rescue group the next day. "I saw animals being treated badly at the circus," she told them. "Do you have proof?" the lady on the phone asked. "Yes, I took videos," Emma said. "That's a good start," the lady said. "But we need more proof, and it might take time to act." Emma felt frustrated. Time? The animals needed help now. That evening, Emma sat in her room, feeling stuck. Then Oscar did something amazing. He picked up a small ball and rolled it toward Emma. He barked softly, then ran under her bed and back out, holding a slipper in his mouth. Emma laughed. "What are you doing, Oscar?" she asked. Then she got an idea. "Wait, you're really good at sneaking around, aren't you?" Emma spent the next hour coming up with a plan. Okay, Oscar, here's what we'll do. You'll distract the trainers. While they're not looking, I'll record more videos. We'll show everyone what's happening. Oscar wagged his tail like he understood. Emma felt hopeful for the first time in days. We're going to help those animals, she said, petting Oscar. I couldn't do this without you. Emma knew it was risky, but she also knew it was the right thing to do. Together, she and Oscar would make a difference. The big night had arrived. The circus was full of people. Kids were laughing, music was playing, and the lights were bright. Emma was nervous, but she knew what she had to do. Stay with me, Oscar, she whispered as they got closer to the tents. Oscar wagged his tail, ready for action. He seemed to know this was important. Emma found a hiding spot behind some crates. She peeked out and saw the trainers standing near the animal cages. This was their chance. Okay, Oscar, Emma said. It's time. Oscar ran out into the crowd. He jumped high in the air, spinning around. People gasped and clapped. Then he ran in circles, wagging his tail and barking happily. He grabbed a ball that had rolled near the stands and tossed it in the air with his nose. The crowd cheered louder, thinking he was part of the show. One of the trainers noticed Oscar and shouted, "Who let this dog in?" He started walking toward Oscar, but Oscar was quick. He darted away, running in front of the audience. The kids laughed and pointed. The trainer followed him, but Oscar kept running, staying just out of reach. While everyone was watching Oscar, Emma sneaked behind the tents. She pulled out her phone and started filming again. She saw the elephants tied up, their legs chained to heavy posts. She zoomed in on the tigers, who were pacing in their small cages. Then she noticed some smaller cages with dogs inside. They were scared and quiet. Emma's heart ached, but she knew she had to keep moving. She found a cage with a tiny monkey inside. Its eyes were wide with fear. Emma looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then she carefully unlatched the cage. "Go," she whispered. The monkey climbed out and ran toward the trees. Emma freed two more small animals, a rabbit and a parrot. She knew she couldn't free the bigger animals yet, but this was a start. She recorded everything so she could show the rescue group later. Back in the main tent, Oscar was still distracting the trainers. He jumped through hoops, wagged his tail, and even rolled over. The crowd clapped and cheered, thinking he was the star of the show. The trainers were getting angry, but they couldn't catch him. Finally, Emma whistled softly. Oscar heard her and ran back to her hiding spot. "Good boy, Oscar," Emma said, petting him. "You did amazing." Emma and Oscar slipped away quietly, leaving the circus behind. Emma felt proud and hopeful. They had saved a few animals and gathered more proof. It wasn't over yet, but Emma knew they were one step closer to helping all the animals. "We're not done, Oscar," Emma said as they walked home. "But we're going to make a difference. I promise." Emma and Oscar were back at the circus the next night. Emma felt nervous, but she had to go again. She had seen so many animals that needed help. She couldn't stop now. This time, Emma found a cage with a small dog inside. The dog looked very scared. Emma reached for the latch and started to open it. She whispered, "It's okay. I'm here to help you." But then, she heard a loud voice behind her. "Hey, what are you doing?" It was one of the trainers. He was big and angry. Emma froze. Her hands started shaking. The trainer came closer, pointing at her. "Get away from there," he yelled. Oscar didn't wait. He barked loudly and ran in circles around the trainer. The man tried to grab Oscar, but Oscar was too fast. He jumped and barked again, distracting the trainer. "Come on, Oscar," Emma shouted. She quickly unlatched the cage, letting the little dog out, and then ran. The trainer yelled, "Stop! Come back here!" But Emma didn't look back. She followed Oscar, who was running ahead, leading the way. They ran through the maze of tents. Oscar seemed to know where to go. He turned left, then right, and then squeezed through a small gap between two tents. Emma followed him, her heart racing. She could hear the trainer shouting behind them. Her legs were tired, but she couldn't stop. Oscar barked again, guiding her through the dark paths. Finally, they reached the edge of the circus grounds. Emma and Oscar ran into the bushes and hid. Emma held her breath, listening. She could still hear the trainer's voice, but it was getting farther away. Emma took out her phone. Her hands were still shaking, but she managed to upload all the videos she had taken. She sent them to the local animal rescue group and even posted them online. "People need to see this," she whispered. She also called the local authorities. "There's animal abuse at the circus," she told them. "I have proof." They promised to investigate. Oscar lay down next to her, panting. Emma hugged him tightly. "You were amazing, Oscar," she said. "I couldn't have done it without you." Emma felt scared, but she also felt strong. They had escaped, and now the truth was out. The circus wouldn't be able to hide what they were doing anymore. Emma looked at Oscar and smiled. "We did it," she said. "We really did it." Early the next morning, Emma and Oscar stood on a hill near the circus. They could see everything from there. Emma felt a little nervous, but she also felt hopeful. In the distance, police cars and rescue trucks arrived. Men and women in uniforms got out. Some carried cameras, others had tools. The animal rescue group was there too. Emma smiled. "They're here," she said softly to Oscar. The police went straight into the circus. Emma watched as they talked to the trainers. Some trainers looked scared. Others tried to argue, but the police didn't listen. They walked around, pointing at the cages and taking notes. A few trainers were even put in handcuffs and taken away. The rescue group started working quickly. They brought big trucks and opened the cages. Emma saw them lead the elephants onto a truck. The elephants' chains were removed, and they walked slowly but freely. It made Emma want to cry, but in a good way. Next, the tigers were moved into special crates. The rescue group handled them with care. The tigers still looked nervous, but Emma could tell they were going somewhere better. She saw the smaller animals too, the rabbits, the parrots, and even the little dog she had freed. They were all being taken to safe places. Oscar sat quietly by Emma's side, watching everything. At one point, he looked up at her. His eyes seemed to say, "Thank you." Emma petted his head. "We did it, Oscar," she whispered. "They're going to be okay now." It took a long time for all the animals to be rescued. Emma stayed on the hill with Oscar, watching until the very last truck drove away. When it was finally quiet again, Emma sat down on the grass. She felt a mix of emotions. She was happy the animals were safe, but she also felt sad thinking about how much they had suffered. Oscar rested his head on Emma's lap. She looked down at him and smiled. "You're my hero, you know that?" she said. Oscar wagged his tail gently. As they walked back home, Emma thought about the future. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew she had done something good. The animals were free, and the circus was shut down. That was enough for now. A few weeks had passed since the circus was shut down. The animals were now safe in sanctuaries. Emma's videos and call to action had made a big difference. And now, Oscar was officially part of her family. Her parents had agreed he could stay forever. Oscar was happier now, but sometimes he still got scared. Loud noises made him hide under the table. Emma always sat with him, stroking his fur. "It's okay, Oscar. You're safe now," she would say. Slowly, he started to trust the world again. At school, Emma worked on a special project. She made a poster about animal cruelty and gave a talk in front of her class. "We need to help animals," she said. "They don't have voices, so we have to speak for them." Her classmates clapped, and some even asked how they could help. Emma felt proud. She was making a difference. One weekend, the town held a small celebration for Emma and Oscar. People brought flowers and treats. The mayor gave Emma a medal. "For your courage and kindness," he said. Emma blushed, but she was happy. She looked down at Oscar, who was wagging his tail. "This is for you too," she whispered. That night, Emma and Oscar sat in the backyard under the stars. The world was quiet. Oscar lay beside her, his head resting on her knee. She stroked his fur gently. "You know, Oscar," she said, "you changed my life. You made me braver. You taught me how to care more than I ever thought I could." Oscar looked up at her with his big, warm eyes. It was as if he understood every word. Emma felt tears in her eyes, but they were happy tears. "We did something good," she said softly. "Not just for the animals, but for us too. We're a team now, forever." Oscar gave a small bark, and Emma laughed. She leaned down and hugged him tightly. In that moment, everything felt right. The pain of the past was still there, but so was hope. And Emma knew, with Oscar by her side, They could face anything together.